I joined government right in the middle of the digital government revolution that started in the UK with the creation of government digital services in the early 2010s, leading to digital service units popping up all over the world, including in my home country of Canada. This was a practical recognition that digital technology like the internet and smartphones were changing people's expectations for how government works, including those of us on the inside. After over a decade of outsourcing government digital capacity to the private sector, a la New Public Management, this movement saw a flip as governments started to try to build digital capacity in-house. All of a sudden, terms like agile and user-centered design came into vogue. However, after more than a decade, it feels like we've hardly made a difference. Government is still slow, still siloed, still opaque as ever. So what's going on? Recently, I've been reading a bunch of Paul Waller's writings. Paul worked at a senior level in e-government for the UK in the 90s, but has become a fierce critic of the digital government revolution that's kind of happened since then. I was intrigued, so I reached out to Paul and had a couple of conversations that turned into a bit of debates. I must admit that I was a bit defensive because Paul was being quite critical of my own sort of position on things. But I found as we discussed it more and more that there's a lot of stuff that he said that I agreed with more than I expected. So to have some fun, I've decided to turn this into a bit of a dramatized debate, a mock debate that highlights hopefully some of the ideas that Paul and I were debating. As a caveat, I've definitely taken some creative license with this script to hopefully make it a bit more engaging and also really highlight the different perspectives. And I have pulled in two of my friends to be actors for this to really help bring some character to this. So big special thanks to my friends Moore and Fabian who've stepped in to help out. And let's kick it off and see how this goes. All right.
Okay, let's dig into this. You are basically critiquing the core of my view on government. What is the problem that you have with the digital government movement?
My fundamental critique is that the people behind the digital government movement don't understand government and how it works. They seem to be more focused on importing private sector buzzwords instead of what actually makes building digital services hard, which is not an ignorance of modern development practices, rather it's policy and legislation nightmares that require fundamental reform. The result is just a lot of surface level changes without substantive transformation. It's just putting lipstick on a pig.
Hey, this is a bit harsh, but they, you mean me, I am part of this movement and we're trying to make much more substantial reform than just importing buzzwords. Government is failing to deliver. It is not meeting the expectations of people or politicians. Surely we should be trying new things and drawing in lesson and best practices from everywhere, including the private sector.
Trying new things isn't the problem. Believing buzzword solutions are. Like, what we've seen with a digital government transformation is a cascade of half-baked concepts. User-centricity, co-creation, government as a platform, repeated so often they're treated like axioms.
But these ideas come from real pain. People were fed up with government being unresponsive. Digital team brought urgency, creativity, and empathy into the system. That's not nothing.
Empathy is good, but governance isn't just a technical design problem. It's a political design problem. You don't just nudge your way to justice, you don't iterate your way to equity. We've imported text-centered logic without understanding what government actually is and how it works. It's a set of laws, accountability, and institutions.
Okay, so in your writing, you talk about the idea of imaginaries, seductive vision of future. They become so accepted, we forget to question them. But that's true of any big idea. It's not always a bad thing. We need to bring new frame to government in a digital age.
Except when those new frames distort reality. Let's take the once-only principle. Sounds great in theory, right? Let's break down data silos so people are not constantly being asked for information. But this isn't a new idea. The problem is it assumes the government is one big machine that can reuse your data everywhere. In truth, it's set up as dozens of constitutionally autonomous entities with conflicting mandates and laws. The once-only principle is a fundamental misdiagnosis which leads to a useless prescription.
But government should be the once-only experiments for people. People don't think that government has many entities, but instead they see government as one thing, For too long, this has been accepted by government teams as a fact of life. We need to be rethinking how government is structured so it can work more cohesively. Aren't these ideas helping us to make better government?
Only if we're honest about its limits. A structure is a constitutional issue, so if you want to have the debate, great, go ahead, but have that debate in the right context. These technology-inspired dreams can be corrupted by power and create risk if you're not careful. For example, co-creation sounds lovely until you realise that it can centre the loudest voices. Personalisation, brilliant, until you've accidentally built a surveillance state.
Wait, hold on. Those are risks, but it doesn't have to be this way. I feel like you are building a straw man. You're making digital government folks sound like we either incredibly naive or all out to dismantle democracy. We're trying to do the exact opposite. Make it more democratic.
This is a second critique I have of the digital movement from the last 15 years. You say you want to make it more democratic, but many of these digital processes being advocated bypass the representative institutions. When you substitute crowdsourcing for policy making, you weaken accountability. Tech-enabled participation doesn't always mean that you've achieved democratic legitimacy.
Okay, this is all happening because, one, our representative institutions aren't feeling very representative or responsive, and two, new digital tools give us way more opportunities to engage directly with users and give them tools to create better services.
Ugh, those words. Services and users.
What's wrong with the word services and users?
It's so private sector, it's so transactional. Why don't we just go ahead and call them a customer? And some teams in governments do. Just look at all those customer experience teams out there. It's new public management on steroids. The relationship between people and governments is so much deeper and more complex than transaction. People have multiple identities as they relate to governments. Are they users? Are they are they prisoners? Are they defendants? Are they witnesses? Are they victims? Are they guides? Are they supporters? There's so many roles that people can play. It's a complex and ongoing relationship.
Exactly, and new digital tools and processes allow us to do that, to build deeper relationship, to create more touch point and feedback loops. Digital doesn't have to mean shallow.
If it's designed well. But again, the danger is language creep, customer service, platform, words that change about how we think about government. Government isn't a pizza delivery system. It's how we decide as a collective who gets what, when and how.
So here's a curveball. You say these reforms are flawed because they don't fit how government currently work. But maybe that's the point. Shouldn't we be reimagining government too?
Fine, reimagine how people interact with government, sure. But this is a big deal, shifting power and resource flows. It's a political act. We can't pretend to do that through user interface tweaks. We're just layering onto a broken system, putting lipstick on a pig, as I said earlier.
But if we don't challenge those structures, who will? A public servant who quietly builds something more humane, maybe they are shifting power. Not with a revolution, but with a small systematic change.
Maybe, but 15 years later, how's it gone so far? The government is a set of institutions governed by policy and legislation. Those shifts need to be rooted in an understanding of law, equity, and public accountability. It's not just going to be achieved through interfaces and dashboards. Have you noticed how most of this discussion around digital transformation is focused on improving transactions, not on improving policy?
Well, first I would say the focus is on delivery, not just transaction. Delivery is important. I think public servants can be lost in policy and lose sight that the policy doesn't mean much if you don't deliver to the people. Delivery is where government meets people and people meet government. It is also where you can build trust and change people's attitudes of government. I mean, aren't we scrambling for more and better policies? They want their government to do what it says on the tin.
I'm not saying don't do delivery. I'm saying that delivery conflates achieving policy outcomes with better administering transactions, which is why I hate the word delivery. I think transactions is a more accurate term. What I am saying is stuff like websites are all downstream from the core functions and decisions of government, and that's where most of the problems are. If we had better policies, then delivery would flow more naturally. I am saying that those who are so passionate about digital government are trying to create change with one hand tied behind their back. I want them involved in policy. Policy is where real power is, and that's where we need to be focusing our energy.
So what's the middle path? Throw out digital entirely?
Not at all, but use it intelligently. Start with a policy goal, understand the instruments and options available, and as part of that ask, can tech help? Sometimes the answer is yes, but it needs to come from the needs of the system, not just be imposed on it.
I can live with that, but let's not lose hope. Your critique is important, but it's one side of the story. The other is that we can and must build services better and faster if we keep one foot in imagination and one in reality.
I agree. And let's make sure that the imagination is achievable given the constitutional, political and legal system we actually have. Imagination is one thing, fantasy is something else.
Deal.
So, digital dreams or democratic dangers? What do you think? Is digital government helping us reimagine the state, or just repeating old mistakes with shinier tools? Drop your thoughts and comments below and just stay curious. One thing I should get you each to do before you go is to introduce yourself.
I am more Rubinstein, a data strategist, consultant, open data geek in general, so that's me.
I'm Fabian Schessel. I've spent most of my career using data to improve public services. I've done that in a ministerial office. I've done that in, as a data engineer and data analyst, and I've done that as a consultant. Views are my own, not my employer's.
Thanks, Fabian. Yeah, I should clarify that it's true of all of us.